Good evening, everybody. It's Hoz and Clayton. We're doing the podcast today from in one place because Clayton was working in London today. He wasn't able to get back to his place in Peterborough in time, so we are where we are, which is in central London, doing the podcast from my office. So today we were hoping to have David Powell, who's a friend of ours from Twitter. He is a data scientist, one of the smartest people we know, he was going to talk to us about the free ports and the special economic zones. We will wait and do that at another time instead because he's not here with us. Maybe he's having technical problems to join us. So with that in mind, we're going to be talking about a few other things. I wanted to talk about a situation that's taking place in Ealing at the moment. And what's happening in Ealing is pretty much something that's most probably happening across the whole country for many other people. But before we go to the Ealing situation, which is Ealing Council has removed some people and said, you've got to move to Hillingdon. And they've just told them to move, and the housing they've sent them to is horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. I don't know. Do you want to talk about that first, or do you want to talk about Gaza and Palestine? And
let's do Ealing and Hillingdon first, and then we can move on to.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is, if you don't mind, people, I'm going to share this screen with you, so you can understand the kind of level of. So yesterday I had a phone call from one of my parliamentary candidates. His name is Sam Habib. Sam stood for us in Ealing North and North Ealing. And this whole situation has taken place under Ealing Council. And as I understand it, the Member of Parliament that was dealing with this group of people was Rupert Huck, who's from the Ealing Central area. And what you're going to see here is there is a group of 10 or 12 families that have been in the Ealing area. They've all been just told, right, we found housing for you. You can either like it or lump it, and you're all going to this place. And they've been sent out to the Hillingdon area. And I want to share some pictures with you of the kind of properties they've been sent in. And this is mould on the roof of the ceiling of the bathroom. This is a wall in their house. This mould is just not, it should not be like that because those spores get into the carpets that you can see there.
That also cause breathing problems. I mean, it's not a sanitary environment, and I'd like to say I've never seen this before in an area, but
I mean, this is horrendous amounts of levels. And that is the address of the place there, which is Margaret Cassidy House. That's where the people live. Now, I've made arrangements with Sam Habib to go and visit them tomorrow. So midday tomorrow, I'm going to be seeing the people who are living there. And I've sent these pictures over to a friend of ours called Bob Gill, Dr. Bob Gill. And we're going to see if we can get Dr. Bob to do a surgery maybe with these people to find out the state of health or the consequences of living in these places. Now, this is horrendous amounts of just mould on these walls. And people should not be living in properties like this. I mean, that is just horrendous. And this is almost everywhere you go, it's got this kind of stuff on it. You've got animals, slugs. That was ants, by the way, we saw there. That's an ant. They've got all sorts of pest control problems. And that is a ceiling that is mostly got the mould directly inside it as well. That's a bathroom. That's underneath someone's bed, I think. Oh my God. So this is a 3-year-old child who is one of the sons of one of the residents. And they have been hospitalized for breathing issues because of this mold. Now, they've got all sorts of creatures basically all over this place. So if you can see these places which are ants, they can't get rid of them. They cannot seem to get rid of them. They are all over the place. This is one of the family members having to go to hospital to to get help for breathing because of all the mold. Did you see that? That's basically the landlord of the agent saying, "Where's the effect? If you don't like it, tell the council you don't like it, and then that's your problem." It's just look at this. This is people's homes that the council is sending them to live. This is in a private property, yeah, that's been rented out by the council for their residents. That is being chewed up by rats, by the way. What you're seeing there is rats chewing up. How are people supposed to live in properties like that? I just don't get it.
I've seen it before though. I saw it before in Lewisham Borough in properties there where there was walls up, mould up the walls. The tenants there, they struggled to. The council just said, "Well, all we can do is stop the rent until they eventually do it." But this doesn't affect. I mean, people are living in houses that literally stink of damp. The damp causes insect infestations. It's just absolutely appalling. I mean, we're supposed to be one of the richest countries in the world, and yet this is how people are expected to live. And this is unscrupulous landlords combined with councils that don't care. And but again, this all goes back to the housing shortage, and a housing shortage that started with the Conservatives selling council properties off, and was continued by the Blair government, who carried on with their same neoliberal policies, meaning that people like this renting substandard condition properties are able to do it because if you don't take it, you can go stay in your B&B.
You heard that person. Do you remember that person who just said, if you don't like it,
they don't care.
Tell the council, and then you can sling your hook.
But look, they don't care because they know that if that person walks away from it, the council will send someone else. And eventually someone will take it in that condition because they are desperate to have their own place. Because if you're not taking that, you're in a bed and breakfast, living under curfew. So what are your options?
I don't know. I mean, this is just madness. Look at this. Rats just infesting the place. I don't know if you saw them. You can see them, can't you? Just look at that. That's a lovely thing, isn't it? Just infested with rats.
But this is complete complacency by the council. I mean, this is just where they, for them, it's just fix problem people. It's just numbers to them. If you don't like it, we'll send the next people, and we'll send the next people, and eventually someone will just take it because they're that desperate for somewhere to live that they'll literally try and sort that problem out themselves, even though it's absolutely substandard. But again, it's a symptom of people who don't care about normal people who are low on options.
It's just not.
But this is mold. These things they're not incredibly hard to fix. Mr. Powell's waiting.
All right, David's here. David, how are you?
Hey, hi.
I'm glad we got, because we just finished the last picture and we just seen that you were there.
Cool.
So, guys, as I was saying to you earlier on, David Powell, otherwise known as European Powell on Twitter, is a good friend of my missus, and they have worked on a huge project together. And it's a project called the Free Zones and Special Economic Zones, Free Ports, Special Economic Zones. And David, I just wanted to ask you something. Can you see at the bottom of your screen where it says leave and share?
Yeah.
If you were to press share, would you be able to share anything that you've got on your screen, or would you not be able to do it?
I'll have a look.
And the reason I'm saying that is because I pulled up some stuff here for you, but it's not going to be as detailed as yours.
Right.
So, ladies and gentlemen, what I want you to understand is this, right? We, at the moment, have got a government. This government of ours is literally talking about getting rid of the elections that are taking place in May in 2025. Now, that is not an election that's taking place across the whole country. What you've got to understand is we have elections for certain parts of the country every year. So it's every 2 years or every year. For instance, the major London council elections will be taking place in May 26. Now, because of the surgent rise of the Reform Party and the destruction of the Labour Party, in the last few days we've had government ministers rolled out there to say, oh, we're thinking about not having elections. And I'm going to let David give us a bit more explanation about that. And to say, like, we need to reorganise, because you know what they do is they reorganise boundaries for constituencies to level up the numbers. But what they're talking about now is reorganising councils so that they can, and my personal opinion is to avoid what will most probably be a crashing defeat for Labour and the Tories, because as we've discussed earlier on between the two of us, me and Clayton, the Labour Party and the Tory Party are a lost cause, and the only show in town are Reform, Greens, Workers' Party. We're the rest of the parties that are fighting up against and trying to win, what I consider to be the common sense people who want to vote for something other than the same old Labour and Tories, which have done nothing different. So with that said in mind, David, do you want to jump in and tell us a little bit about what you think about the government's seeking opportunity to not have these elections, what the impact of not having elections, and also how the free ports work, how you think that because I've heard from you and from Lynn, who have told me that councils may be something of the past and that we're going to end up with these special economic zones and free ports, and how those things may become the new way of managing what used to be the council's work.
Yeah. Well, I think with the council situation, it's no coincidence that over the last couple of years, in England alone, 192 councils have higher debt rates than Birmingham, which was issued with an S114 notice, which is technical bankruptcy. And I know, and just to give you an example, with Birmingham, that is home to 6 special economic zones, and it's just they've also.
Can I ask you to stop there for a second? Can you tell me what a special economic zone means? So that the idiot that's Hoz that doesn't understand it, what that means, because you know what it means, but the average person listening to this will not know what it means.
Right. Okay, so a special economic zone is a designated region in which a governmental authority offers incentives, usually on corporate tax breaks, to aid economic growth. But that is mainly for companies. Now, special economic zones are like ring-fenced areas within the host country. So we just talked about Birmingham. There are 6 special economic zones operating in Birmingham now. So what that means is that the surrounding economies, they don't have the same kind of tax breaks and things like public services, which will be absolutely slashed and shredded in special economic zones. So you've got the surrounding zones will not be able to maintain their their economies, basically.
It's a competitive edge is what you're talking about.
The competitive
because one
edge.
actually has to pay business rates and the other one pays nothing. Am I right in saying that?
They'll be kind of in competition, and they won't have the resources because of what is called state aid, which is going to companies in the special economic zones. That is actually illegal in the EU. So each special economic zone, remember, it's a carve out of a region of the country. There are 74 special economic zones all over the UK. So state aid, when Brexit happened, state aid, Thatcher's zones, right? She had them, and they failed because they came up against EU rules on state aid, which prevent governments of member states giving state aid public money to companies just to make profits. Now, with Brexit, that's all gone. Okay, so they're on, the
Right.
UK is on World Trade Organization rules. And that is very bad news for economies outside of the zones, because they're basically using special economic zones to create an unlevel playing field, which is the complete opposite of the EU single market. So this all
Hmm.
sounds kind of complex, but I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. Corporations get tax breaks for 10 years inside the special economic zones, and there's numerous kinds of corporate tax breaks that will happen. Already, corporations are pushing to extend the deadlines beyond the 10-year limit. So that's like really not good
What
for
kind of
local,
what kind
for
of
public services and local infrastructure and things like that, because profits will be onshored either in, private banking or, tax havens, basically in the UK. That's what special economic zones are. They're going to make patchworks of corporate sovereignties all over the UK.
David, can I ask you a question? I don't know if this is the case or not, but within these special economic zones, surely then commercial properties must have absolutely gone up astronomically in value.
Well, there's a funny thing. I just want to bring in the compulsory orders, which were rolled out with Gove's Levelling Up Bill, which apply to agricultural, business, and residential properties. So, if you're talking about a zone that is deregulated, companies like BlackRock, who Labour have just announced they're in partnership with, they basically own everything. So,
Yeah,
when they've got a special economic zone for them to kind of go into, they can quickly snap up all the council assets and all those public services that are basically atrophying from decades of austerity, right? And all the welfare cuts that are going on. So that's deeply
yeah,
problematic. I don't know if that
yeah.
answered your question.
That's what I was thinking, because I thought, I guarantee you, if something like this has happened, there's BlackRock's going to be involved somewhere, and it's going to be them scooping up all the assets,
Yeah.
becoming special economic zones, suddenly becoming worth a phenomenal amount of money, because any corporation located there is going to get huge tax breaks.
I want to know what the tax breaks are. What kind of tax breaks are we talking about here?
Gosh, I read that there's numerous corporate tax breaks, and I don't know much about what tax breaks are, but I think it's basically that they can onshore their profits. Normally you would offshore your profits to tax havens like the Cayman Islands, right? So
Okay,
it's all
yeah.
about profit making. It's also all about deregulation, which means allowing companies again to just make loads of profits. That's what it is, and not pay their way, not commit to local infrastructure. This is all on the EU Commission's website, and they call it Adam Smith's invisible hand, which means corporations within the special economic zones are being trusted by governments to self-regulate, right? So you see what happens there with the water companies. That's a great example of what happens. They make the profits, they get tax breaks, but they don't commit anything back to improving their product or their services when things go, wrong. So that's what's going to happen. So all public services, and we're talking about education, we're talking about rubbish collection, road mending, everything you can think of, parks. I mean, in certain zones in the world, you need a permit to walk into a park, you know, if you're a resident in there. And we get on to things like, they
Wow.
used to call them charter
Wow.
cities, right? But they used to call them company towns, where a company owns a town, people work in the company, right? But that's changed. They're known as charter cities now, and I think that's where this is all going.
Because I know when I looked into Freeports before, I know that they don't pay any kind of rates to the council.
Yeah.
They don't pay national insurance, employer contributions.
That's the one, yeah.
And like, so basically everything that should go into the local economy, into the local infrastructure, doesn't hit it.
Yeah.
So what's ending up happening is that they're making the money, but the local council are still providing the services, but they're in a position where they're providing the services, but with no money to back that up, because all that money is going into the corporations that are sitting in these nice BlackRock-owned buildings.
Right. So what happens when all those public services are just, basically in the toilet? that's when corporations like BlackRock will say, well, we can rescue them ourselves, but they'll rescue them by privatizing everything.
So I
Right?
think that in effect, what we're talking about here is this is the privatisation of all council services.
Yeah.
So much in the same way as our crown jewels, as I call them, British Rail, water, gas, electricity, BT, all of these things that we as the country owned have all been turned into privatised entities that now make profit. Our British Rail, for instance, is making profit for the state-run and owned French government railways. They are some of the largest shareholders in the British Rail corporations are French companies. And now what you're telling me is that we're looking at the privatisation of our councils as well.
Yeah, totally. Of course. There's bad news. And the thing is, a lot of people don't know that, like, if you looked at Labour's manifesto for the general election this year, I think I saw the word, one or two sentences where they say they're going to improve port structure. They didn't mention one thing. They didn't even use the word free port, and I'll tell you why. Because a port is publicly owned, but a free port is privately owned. And they also said in the last but honestly, it comes down to this. So that, of course, special economic zones and ports in the EU are publicly owned. That's why the EU says, no, you can't go, using this state aid, public money for your profits. We're not going to do that. That's going to wreck the entire single market. That's what they call an unlevel playing field. That's not going to happen. That's why Brexit happened, because I told you Thatcher's SEZs came up against the rules on state aid. And that's why they didn't succeed in those kind of neoliberal terms. But now Brexit came, that's turbocharged the reincarnation of free ports and SEZs, like 74. So 48 in England, 18 in Scotland, 8 in Wales. So you had Andy Burnham, you had Steve Rotherham, these metro mayors. You had the First Minister, Mark Drakeford, signing off on 8 SEZs in Wales, and 2 free ports in Wales, 2 free ports in Scotland, 8 free ports in England. And, I looked at the parliamentary transcripts of Mark Drakeford, and you can read it. He says, well, I understand the risks, what about things like tax evasion, human weapon, arms trafficking, that kind of thing, drugs trafficking, stolen art, private banking. He knew the risks, but he went ahead and did it. Now, do you know who was at the signing off with Mark Drakeford? A man called Shankar Singham. Now, he is a UK trade lawyer. He works for several different government consultancy agencies, Babson Global, Compter, and he's the one who designed the deregulatory structure for companies to set up in special economic zones. He did the same. I think it was he privatized the electricity under Thatcher's government, right? So this guy is involved with all kinds of other governance consultancies like Prospera. I don't know if you've heard of Prospera. Prospera are an American company who set up a special economic zone, and guess who funded Prospera? Peter Thiel of Palantir, right? Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, you've heard of him, right?
So,
Prospera, they tried to set up a special economic zone in Honduras, okay?
I know about that.
Right, so then what happened was the Supreme Court of Honduras, they shut down the special economic zone because it violated citizen sovereignty. Okay, so shut down. Great, brilliant, you think. But no, within the contract, I think it's like 25-year license, which is the same for UK special economic zones, there's something called an ISDS, which is the Investor State Dispute Settlement. The World Bank in 1966 set up something called ISDS, Investor State Dispute Settlement. This gives powers to corporations to bypass domestic courts of any sovereign country and sue that government for breaches of contract, say for infringing on their rights to introduce modern day slavery, pollute the environment, this kind of thing. So Prospera are still in the process of suing Honduras government for $11 billion, which is, I think, a third of their economy. So what I'm trying to find out is, I know for a fact, because I've seen the CPTPP deals with Brexit, the post-Brexit trade deals with the, transatlantic, Asian Pacific, those deals. I discovered that on the UK government's website, there is a page of an oral evidence committee convened by, Parliament to interview Kemi Badenoch about
Right.
ISDS in the CPTPP deals, and they are enshrined in those deals. So that means any foreign corporation can sue the British government if they feel their rights to do terrible things, like I say, pollute the environment, workers' rights. If they think their rights have been breached, they can sue the UK government. Now, my thing is, there is something else is going on. ISDS, I believe, is also inside the SEZ contracts, which are 25 years. I was on an interview, a little talk with a government representative for freedom of information. Right, you can just find
Yeah.
that. You can
Yeah.
do a live chat. I asked him the question: is ISDS embedded in the UK 74 special economic zones and free ports licenses? He couldn't give me the answer, and he tried to point me to a page where you can type in this kind of thing, but nothing came back. So, as I know, a lot of freedom of information requests on the free ports and UK SEZs have come back either heavily redacted. I think it was Lynn who posted a video where you see all these redactions, for commercial sensitivity, you can't see it, or FOI requests are completely ignored. So there's this problem. The thing I wanted to go back to was the ISDS. I think the Financial Times published an article last week, and they were very concerned that Teesside, now there's Equinor and I think it's BP, British Petroleum. They're working together, but they've established a system, a contract, which I call ISDS, where they can sue the council, they can sue the government, right? If the council or representatives or local constituents say, hang on, you're dumping pollution here, or hang on, you're taking this piece of land, or something like that. But that's also, I believe ISDS is in all these SEZ contracts.
Yeah.
Right?
What is the current government sort of public rationale for SEZs? What's their, why are they saying these are a good thing? Why are they bringing them in? Like,
It's totally for corporate control. If you go on the government's website, and they've got all the facts about why Thatcher zones didn't work because of being in the EU, and they even list that there was overwhelming evidence that the benefits of being inside a special economic zone just were a fraction of the estimated goals, or the jobs and things like this. They even go into things like, you can read it all on the website, job displacement is very common in special economic zones. That means people will leave, say, one area and flock to the special economic zone, but it doesn't work like that. It's just a kind of a vicious circle of, the companies make the profits, they don't put it into the infrastructure, local infrastructure, and then when they've got their tax breaks, they just piss off to the next zone. Okay?
But it also must create an economic desert around the SEZs as well,
Yeah.
because anybody who's got money is going into that SEZ. All that money is getting withdrawn from that local population.
Yeah.
And then, like, where that was before becomes like an economic desert. So
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
all you're doing is just a massive wealth transfer, isn't it? From
Yeah, absolutely. And let me
from
just
the
say,
community.
I don't know if I already mentioned this, 74 economic zones, each special economic zone gets £160 million. So multiply that by 74, it's 11,840,000,000 quid. And that is state aid, that is public money. So the locals are effectively subsidizing companies to take that money and set up shop, extract resources. Say on Dartmoor National Park, a US company was eyeing up Dartmoor because they know it's one of the world's biggest lithium resources. Okay, so Dartmoor and Plymouth Freeport, that's a 75-kilometer diameter special economic zone. So that's the thing.
Stop.
What?
75 kilometres?
Yeah, I sent you some maps of that. I know.
Oh, yeah.
How big is that area that's 75 kilometres? 75 kilometres is bigger than the whole of London.
Yeah, there you go. So I can't get this up on my screen because I tried to share it, but it said I need passwords and things. I don't have time to do that. But I did send them to Lynn. I don't know if she can flash one up. I sent the Dartmoor Special Economic Zone to her. But yeah, they sent, so like say the one in the Firth of Forth, that is 38 kilometers in diameter. It covers 70% of the city of Edinburgh. Okay?
But let's be fair. These geographical sizes, they're not coincidences, are they? Because
No.
if you go 75 miles from Plymouth,
Yeah.
you're in Dartmoor.
Yeah.
Whereas if you were 20 miles from Plymouth, you're not in Dartmoor, right? So it's these sizes. They're carefully constructed for resource exploitation, for making sure they have maximum economic benefit to those who are using it.
Apparently, 75 square kilometers is the maximum size you can go for a special economic zone. So I think what will happen is the zones themselves that are smaller than that will just gradually expand, and it's all stemming out of the free port, right? A free port is a tiny little port, right? But the zones, every single free port, that's 12 of them in the UK, there you go, are housed inside the special economic zone.
That's Southampton,
Yeah.
Isle of Wight and Portsmouth, 73 miles.
Yeah.
Liverpool City Council area, 45 kilometres round.
Yeah.
This is a huge amount of land then, isn't it? It's not like this is Plymouth one.
There you go.
See what I mean? See how it stretches up to Dartmoor? This isn't a mistake. Do you know what I mean? It's these are carefully constructed maps to make sure that they can properly extract as much money as possible.
And David, am I right in saying that they don't have to follow the rules and regulations for mining, for extraction, because they've got their own rules and regulations that they have in place to be able to?
That's the pattern of, like when I mentioned Honduras, like companies can kind of parachute in their own workers or their own employees and their own drilling equipment. It's all about disaster capitalism, right? So that's what happens. That's the way it goes. But that's the thing. That's why they're deregulated. That's why companies are being. That's the prime example was the water companies. Okay.
Can I ask you a question as well? Lynn was telling me about a situation where there was a steel factory or some kind of company, not a steel factory, that was a park area that was full of horrible, horrendous oils and whatever else that needed to get cleaned up. And the government paid £500 million to remove all of the dirt and all the stuff that was there. What was left was the scrap metal of the building.
Yeah.
And the scrap metal. Can you tell me that story of what happened there? And
I think you're talking about Teesside.
Yeah.
So this Teesside is known as Sunak's flagship Brexit Freeport SCZ, and that every Freeport receives seed capital. Again, 25 million. So times 12, that's 300 million. The exception, though, with Teesside is that they've already spent 560 million of taxpayers' money on Teesside Freeport alone. This is covered in a lot of detail on Private Eye. So there was a case of, I think residents were noticing that there was a lot of dredging going on and loads of oil and things like this were just left all over the coastline. But that's the thing, because the whole thing of ISDS is they don't want to pay for any damages they make, so they can charge first of all, the taxpayer will have to clean up their mess. That's the same thing why they hire the bills of the water companies now, right? 36% by 2026. It's the same principle. Just apply that principle to every single Freeport and special economic zone. Whatever it is they're extracting, whatever it is they're polluting, they make the profits. Profits in Teesside are tilted 90% 9 to 10 in favour of the private sector, 10% in for the public sector. Right?
All I know is that we're getting ripped off.
Yeah.
That's all I know. We're getting ripped off left, right and centre. And as I understand it as well, just so you know what's going on, and I'm not preaching to you, to put David here, but these things were put in place by the Tory party, okay, and they made sure that Labour councillors were involved in the infrastructure of all of these things, so that it's a continuity of, so it doesn't matter whether it's a Tory or it's Labour. These special economic zones have been put in place to allow a continuation of this project. This project, whether it's a Tory or Labour, makes no difference because they've got their hands like this tied together, both parties, to get away with absolute murder here. And this is a bloodbath of our councils. This is a bloodbath of revenue that is not going to be coming to the councils. So what did they do with the NHS? What do they do with everything else? They defund them and then they say it's not working. See, it's not working. Well, it's not working because you're not giving the money to them. You're not supplying the money that's required. So if you defund the councils by taking away the business rates, by giving special interest to these companies and corporations that get to these special economic zones, and they get to do whatever they want to do, and if you don't like it, they get to sue you for the pleasure as well, you are defunding our way of life. Our country is effectively getting balkanized by corporations, much in the same way as they're talking about the balkanization of Syria. Our country's economies are getting balkanized.
But the problem is it doesn't matter what happens, and we've seen this for the last 45 years since Thatcher through Blair. These neoliberal policies, they just need more and more and more. They've taken the rails, they've taken the water, they've taken all the energy sector, and now what's next? And, by the sounds of it, it's property, it's councils, it's services, it's council services. I mean, how long before every waste collection is a private service? Every aspect of our way of life is done by private sector. I mean,
I just want to bring in what Shankar Singham said when I mentioned to you that he was the one developing this kind of deregulatory framework for special economic zone. He said, what we want is laws as services that companies demand. That's what he said. And that the zone is the perfect kind of isolated carve out to do that. So what I meant earlier was that the surrounding economies, those not within the special economic zones, you cannot compete with a kind of a massive shift of capital that is going from one zone and being offshored somewhere or onshored in a private bank, right? They're just going to completely fall by the wayside, and that's why the zone will expand. I mean, Geoffrey Howe and Margaret Thatcher said the plan was, I've read their interviews with them in a book called, was it Democracy in Chains by Peter Gagan, Irish, fantastic writer. Geoffrey Howe, they said that what they wanted was the Singapore model, which was actually a British colonialist project in 1850, which kickstarted the Opium Wars. So they've actually, that was known as China's century of humiliation. So now it's come back to the UK and they want to do it to their own citizens, right? It's basically about humiliating the workforce, the workers, ordinary people, trying to put it together, regardless if they've got 2 or 3 jobs. Maybe they're claiming benefits, to make ends meet. It's like the movie I, Daniel Blake. I don't know if you saw that, by Ken Loach.
Yeah.
Fantastic film. The desperation is just palpable. But Ken Loach's films are not fiction. It's pretty much documentary. So this is what's happening now in the UK, and no one in the MSM is touching it. You've got people like I think Chris Gray of Byline Times. He's been trolling me across social media platforms, saying what I'm talking about is absolute rubbish. But every time I read what he says about special economic zones, he doesn't bring in all these other facets that we're talking about right now. He just conveniently ignores them. So I've had to start blocking him.
But it's common sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you give a huge amount, if you give these economic preferences to areas, it's going to create economic deserts around them because they can't compete.
Yeah.
It's how is the neighbouring area ever going to compete with an area? They can't.
They even have a technical term for it. It's called voided patterning. So if you imagine a piece of lace, that makes a pattern, those patterns are basically the muscles and sinews of corporate, trade, or the corporate political model. The spaces in between, that's where you guys are. That's where ordinary people reside. That's called voided patterning.
All right, David, I need you to do me a favour now. Thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate you coming along and helping us out. If you can, whenever you can,
Yeah.
I'd be grateful if you've got other people who are helping you do the bringing of this news. Let them know that we are looking to every Thursday, if we can. I'm not saying over the Christmas period because a lot of people will be doing other things. I may not be home myself, but I would be grateful if you can think about giving us an update, maybe once every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, just
I'll
to
do
say,
my
look,
best. Absolutely. I've been talking to lots of people, like radical pensioners groups in Liverpool. I talked to anti-Freeports groups in Hampstead, a church group in Hampstead. And
yeah,
it's amazing. There's a really wide demographic of people from very young age to old age who are really, really pissed off with what's happening. They feel
well,
absolutely disenfranchised and powerless. So, I'm not alone in digging up all this kind of stuff. I mean, Lynn is just one of the best researchers I've ever worked with, ever. She switched me on to it, in fact, because I was just
yeah,
asking questions about what the hell, what is Brexit, what is it really doing? So, like I say, I've been doing online conversations from Scotland to right down to the bottom of south of England. I will continue. I've got appointments coming up in the new year, but I'd be happy to link up with you guys whenever possible, and we can exchange information on updates, because it's going to turbocharge in 2025. Trump is already announced he wants what he calls freedom cities in the US. Okay? So it's going to go insane.
And look, what we have to do is make sure this isn't a quiet theft of our public services.
Yeah.
That's why, because that's what they're trying to do. It's a quiet theft of public services under a different name that nobody understands until it's too late and it's already happened. So,
I mean, we could say that the part of the kind of complexity of special economic zones and free ports, that is actually their camouflage. So that's why we need to really dig into what these things are, all the kind of infrastructural, deregulatory systems that are being put in place while we sleep, not being reported by the MSM. It's down to grassroots organizations to make this vocal, and that can work. Look what happened with the people in Honduras. Supreme Court got it shut down because it violated citizen sovereignty. I know that the ISDS system is in, and that's a huge fucking problem. But we just got to keep going. This is the only way it can change. This is the only way. The Unity Party, they are not interested in what we have to say about this. Okay?
yeah. Right, David, listen, what I need you to do is, I didn't get a chance to tell you what I need you to do after you finish this call with me. Leave your PC on, because what it's doing is your audio and your video files are being uploaded to the web. So just leave it on. I'm going to be, I need you to leave basically whenever you feel like you finished your point. Then leave your PC on. And what it will do is it will show a little marker that how many percentage of your thing is going up. And I mean, if you look
I'm
at
on
it, it's important.
99% right now. 100%.
What is it on?
Says 100% uploading.
What percent is it on?
99.
Well, that's because you've got an amazing speed on your PC. So just give it 2 minutes after you've finished, and it will be finished.
Thank you guys for inviting me. I really enjoyed it. Hopefully we get things momentum for this.
Yeah, we're trying to have a common sense conversation and make people understand it in simple English, layman's terms, rather than highbrow and all that other stuff. I just want people to understand what's going on in our country. David, thank you very much for joining us. Mate.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Clayton. Thank you, Hoz. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, David. Thanks, mate. So that's quite scary, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's like I say, it's that quiet theft. It's what I don't know if you ever heard the term by Edward Snowden. Like when they brought in the Patriot Act, it was called he called it the Cute Puppies Act. You put a term on something which sounds like it's beneficial.
Edward Snowden, you mean?
Yeah.
Edward. Okay, you said Edward Stone.
Oh yeah, sorry, Edward Snowden. Like he calls it the Cute Puppies Act. You give it a name which sounds appealing that nobody would complain about, and while you're doing it, you take away everything underneath.
I think the funniest thing for me was him saying, when it's called a port, it's owned by the public. But when it's called a free port, the public don't own it.
No.
If it starts being a free port, it starts being owned by businesses.
No.
Right. And I wanted to say a little bit about what's happening in Gaza at the moment, and because I wanted to make sure we always do a segment on Gaza, and we always do a segment on what's happening in Palestine, Lebanon, and Syria. The latest news is that there are talks of a ceasefire, but it's a ceasefire that's a limited ceasefire for Gaza, so that they can get some of the hostages, and by hostages I mean the dead ones' bodies back. They're not actually looking to have peace in Gaza. They're not actually looking to have a full ceasefire. They're just talking about, and this is from the Israeli side, the Palestinians are quite happy to have a comprehensive ceasefire that involves all Israeli troops leaving the whole of the Gaza period, the Gaza Strip and everything else, but that's not been accepted yet. The situation in Syria is that the Israelis have taken over the water sources for the Jordan and for Syria. The Yarmouk River has been taken over by Israelis, and there's a minister, and these are his words. He's saying that we've taken over the control of the water, so Syria and Jordan have to behave. They have to behave. If they don't behave, we can cut off the water. So that's where we are at the moment. And also we've got a situation with Turkey, and Turkey is saying the territorial integrity of the Syrian country must not be, it mustn't be broken up, it mustn't be balkanized. And yet their troops are in Aleppo, and it looks like they're going to take Homs. It looks like they're going to take, Idlib as well. And that's going to become their sphere of influence. And they've said that they don't want the Kurds to stay on the eastern coast of Euphrates. They want them back out of the place, and they want that to be given back to the Syrians. The Kurds have turned around and said that we're not going anywhere. This is part of a greater Kurdistan area, because they've got parts of Iraq are under Kurdish control. So we've got a situation where these three forces, which is the Israelis, the Arabs, and the Kurds and Turks, effectively saying they're going to keep parts of Syria. Syria is getting divided up, unfortunately, and all of those people that cheerleaded this situation, congratulations. You've basically have cheerleaded the destruction of the Arab Syrian or Syrian Arab Republic, and it's gone. And it's gone until such time as people have the heart to give up what they've taken. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. But look, we knew this was going to be the plan. This was never about the benefit of the Syrian people or the Syrian state. This is about the balkanization of yet another country, like we had in Libya. It's about breaking a regime and then controlling the parts you want to control, controlling the resources, controlling the war forts. And yeah, look, anytime they tell you it's about the people, you know they're lying. So
all I can tell you is that this has worked out perfectly and accidentally perfectly for Israel, because I now know that what was supposed to be an attack on Aleppo was not supposed to be rolled into the whole country falling in under a week, and falling the way it has done, to the point where the defense, and also just to bear in mind, it looks like that the Syrian armed forces were paid off to not fight, and they basically walked away from their duties. And this is like, and they were ordered to stand down, is what my friend Syrian girl says. They were ordered to stand down, but it looks like now there's a lot of people that just got paid off to not stand there and not get in the way. You had an army of 300,000 people, 270,000 Syrians, armed forces that were a feared armed force, just melted away and melted into the population. People took their uniforms off and just left their bits and pieces. Obviously, there was a small group of people that stayed in the northwest part of the country, but all of those areas are now under the command and control of the HTS. And it's bizarre that Donald Trump has said that he is still going to pay £10 million or US dollars for the head of Jolani, who is the guy who is the head of this organization. He was the head of ISIS. He was literally the guy that ordered, and there's pictures of him with people who went and did, what's it called, strapping themselves bombings. And so he's still a designated terrorist, but don't worry. Bowden from the BBC's gone and had an interview with him to rehabilitate him in the eyes of the people. They've got him smiling, even though he was a terrorist that was, he was a terrorist. There is no doubt that this guy was a terrorist. And they basically rehabilitated him. We've had our foreign office send staff there. Embassies are opening up all over the place from all over the world with these guys. And what people don't understand is these guys, and at the core of it, are Islamicists. What does that mean? That means that once the dust clears, they're behaving themselves at the moment. There's no problems whatsoever. They're not murdering people left, right, and centre, which is the greatest fear I had of the situation. But in the end, they're going to want to have an Islamic state, in the sense that even though, I'm not saying Afghanistan, but will women have equal rights? Will they be able to do all the things? Because not now, not the period of time when Western governments are on top of them, saying, please don't do this because you're going to make us look like we're idiots and whatever else. Don't do anything now. Just wait and wait and wait. But in the future, like Syria was not what I consider to be an Iranian or Pakistani or Afghanistani. It was a very liberal European sort of style country. Now it's going to be going towards the very Islamic turnout. And if it does happen like that, the Syrian people are people of the Levant, like Lebanese people. They're not those people. They're not going to want to be told that you've got to wear a hijab and this is what's going to happen. They want to have the freedoms. I mean, nothing will make me happier than to see Syria be a prosperous country with the same freedoms and whatever else, and I mean cultural freedoms, and not to be blackmailed, bullied emotionally, this one way or another, to behave in a certain way because they're a woman, because, men are in charge. Anyway, it is what it is.
I think, unfortunately, time will tell. I think, as I say, I don't think we've seen nothing yet when it comes to Syria. That's my feeling, unfortunately. And I think it's going to be a rapidly moving situation. And I think in a year's time, we can actually look back and actually get the full expression of what's going to happen.
Let's see. Right, guys, I think we're going to call it. I wish I'd been able to tell a little bit more about the Ealing situation, but I'm going to go and meet the residents and visit them tomorrow with Sama Habib, our London Regional Secretary, and I'll hopefully give you some news. Our next podcast will be, I think, is it on Sunday, you said?
Sunday, yeah, Sunday.
What time is going to be good?
Let's do 6 to 7.
6 to 7. So we'll always stick to 6 to 7. So Sunday night will be the next time we'll be out and hopefully give you the latest news of what's happened over the weekend before you get ready to go out for the rest of the week. Thank you all very much for watching. It's goodbye from me and...
Yeah, goodbye from me. Thanks a million, guys.
All right, take care, guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.